I love the idea of us reconnecting with people who, for whatever reason, may not be participating in the church anymore. It's so important to understand and be intentional and excellent in the way that we reconnect with people. I've heard people say things, I've said things that later, thinking back, realize that was the worst thing I could have said. When people come back to church or they give Christianity another try, we don't want to say things like, hey, where have you been hiding at? Or what rock did you crawl out from under? Where have you been? That puts people on the spot. That gets them in the defensive. We just want to tell people we're glad they're there. One of the important places where I learned the importance of reconnecting and doing it in a safe way was in 12-step recovery. I left the church, but before I came back to the church, I found hope and wholeness and recovery from addiction in 12-step recovery. And what I learned there, I believe, is so important for the church in reconnecting to people. When I walked in the door, I was just told, man, we're just glad you're here. Keep coming back. We're just glad you're here. Keep coming back. They would tell me things like, hey, one day at a time, and give yourself a break. Don't be too hard on yourself. These kind of things were so important for me to hear early on. Because when someone comes, whether it be to a church or a 12-step meeting, they're vulnerable. They're taking a chance. And we want to make sure that we treasure that vulnerability, that we're careful with them. And so we want to tell people, like I heard at that meeting, we're glad you're here. Keep coming back. I'll never forget when I came to the meeting for the first time. I was so nervous, but I left there feeling more empowered, more loved than I had ever felt before. We want people to come to church and feel that exact same way. You know, in recovery, sometimes people relapse and they go out. We won't see people for a year or two. When they get back, we don't say, hey, where have you been and what did you do? We just said, man, it's great to see you. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. Progress, not perfection. And these are so important. The love I experienced there in 12-step recovery was so fundamental for me. And it was one of the steps bring me back to the church. And I knew I had a fellowship of friends that were there to support me when I started coming back to church. I knew this was so important for me. As I began to come back to church, I had more strength, I had more confidence. We want our churches to be that way when people come and we reconnect with them. The book talks about this concept of letting people merge on this superhighway. We want to make it easy. We want to get over and get out of the way. Too often, the church is too worried about what we like. We're focused on what we want instead of thinking about what does the new person think? What does the person who we're reconnecting want? What's going to make it easier for people to connect with Christ? We want to let people merge. We want to slow down and let people in so they can join us and we can reconnect with them and be an agent in their salvation. A part of that is the importance of being intentional and doing things with excellence. The book really brings out the importance of intentionality and excellence. Very often as I'm traveling around and I speak to churches and they talk to me and I ask them, well, what is the best attribute of this church? They will always tell me, well, we're a friendly church. We're just a good, friendly church. We're one of the most friendliest churches ever. Interestingly, I have heard some of the most unfriendliest churches say that very thing. The book brings out how we're friendly to people we like. We're friendly to our friends, but we don't even notice the people who are maybe walking in again for the first time in a long time. We want to make sure we're intentional about reaching people. So we have to stop thinking and assuming that we're friendly, and we have to start making sure that we're friendly. Look for people you don't recognize. Train your greeters. I have found that one of the most important ministries at any church are the greeters, because that is the first impression. We need to train our greeters. We need to train people on how to reconnect with people, what to say, what not to say. Dale Carnegie says that the most beautiful sound to anyone's ear is the sound of their own name. Let me tell you, nothing makes a more beautiful impression that you care than remembering someone's name. One of the tricks to remembering people's name is you say it back to them. When someone introduces themselves to you, you say it multiple times in the conversation, and you work towards remembering that name. And then the next time you see them, and you can say, "Hey, John. Hey, Bill. Hey, James, good to see you." It makes such a powerful impression, and it communicates you really do care. That when you're listening to someone, you're really listening to them. You're not just thinking about something else. You're engaging with that person as an individual. You know what I noticed about Jesus in his ministry when he walked this earth? Every single person Jesus interacted with, he did it as a unique, special approach to that person. He always approached the person as the unique person that they were. And friends, we need to do the same thing in ministry. We can't just approach everybody the same way. You may be a hugger. Not everybody who comes and wants to reconnect through a hug. You need to respect people's social boundaries. We need to look to nonverbal physical communication cues to know what to do and what not to do. These are so important about being intentional. Having your worship service done with excellence. The sermon is connecting them to Christ. You're patient with people. People can come broken and get honest about what they're struggling with, and they're not going to be judged or penalized because they get honest. Let me tell you, honesty is the beginning of transformation. And if a church, people can't get honest, then they will not go to the church. If the church is not a safe place for people to get vulnerable, they won't come to the church. Make sure you're connecting people to Christ. Jesus said, "If I am lifted up, I will draw all people." All right, so make sure Christ is lifted up in the music, in every aspect of the worship service, in the community. People do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. I will never forget, early in recovery, my sponsor came up to me and asked me to make the coffee. I didn't really know how to make coffee at the time, but he told me, "Richie, the foundation of recovery is selfless service. That the best way to get out of your problem is to get out of yourself and to focus on serving someone else." He said, "Richie, the best way to keep what we have is by giving it away. So I understand you may not feel like you can make a good cup of coffee, but please help me and make that cup of coffee." And so I did. And let me tell you, I made that coffee. That was some potent coffee. People were dropping out of their seats. It was so strong. But you know what? As I took one sip of my own coffee and realized that stuff is terrible, I looked around the room and I saw all these people from my home group who loved me choking down and drinking that coffee. And they didn't drink it because it was good. They drank it because they cared about me. They loved me. And they wanted, my feelings were more important to them than their preference. And so they drank it. Now, they never asked me to make the coffee again, but they took a chance on me. And you know what? That seems like such a small thing. But friends, it is so important. We have got to communicate with other people that we care more for them than anything else, that we love them and we want to see them succeed. Let's be intentional with the way we connect people, and let's be ready to do worship with excellence and reconnect with the people that God is going to be sending back into your lives.
We have come to the end of our resource, Chapter 4, Prepare. The word prepare actually reminds me of when our daughter Vanessa was born. Roger and we did all sorts of things to prepare our home to be able to receive her, make sure it was a comfortable place, make sure it was a safe place. And the same thing goes for each and every one of us. As we're thinking about those who are going to come and return to our church, we need to prepare our church, make it a safe place, a warm place. As you go to the end of chapter 4 and you answer these questions, keep these people in mind. Think of a name, make it personal to you.